Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to everyone. Welcome to today's lecture. In our lives, we always plan. That is, we make a decision on what we are going to do. For example, we will write our New Year resolution at the beginning of every new year. So this is our plan. Now, planning comes from the word plan. Planning is the process to execute that plan. So a plan is nothing without planning. Planning is everything. It takes us where we want to go. So today, we will learn about planning, monitoring, and evaluation in oral health. Now, at the end of this lecture, you should be able to list the uses of planning, be able to describe the steps in the planning process, and be able to define the types of evaluation and able to construct the steps in evaluation. Planning is an integral part of oral care provision, and it can operate at many different levels. For example, at national level, state level, district level, or even within a dental practice. Clinicians develop treatment plan for individual patients based on their oral health needs. Planning serves as a guide to make decisions to achieve the desired outcome. At the most, it is the basic level planning that we should have. Planning provides a guide and structure to the process of decision making. By having a proper planning, we can hope to maximize the results within the limited resources available. There are many proverbs or sayings that describe planning. These are the two most popular ones. According to Benjamin Franklin, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And E.C. Banfield states that a plan is a decision about a course of action. Now let us see what are the uses of planning. Number one, as managers, we need to make effective decisions as to how we should allocate our resources so that we can achieve our goals or to maximize outcome. So the first use of planning is to match limited resources with many problems. Number two is to eliminate wasteful expenditure or duplication of expenditure. In this way, productivity is maximized and resources are not wasted on projects with little chance of success. Thirdly is to develop the best course of action to accomplish a defined objective. According to Spiegel and Co., health planning is of various types. It may be problem-solving planning, and this involves the identification and resolution of a problem. For example, if the problem is dental fluorosis, then the community formulates a plan to solve this problem. It may also be program planning, which entails designing of a course of action for a circumscribed health problem. For example, a school-based fluoride rinse program is established because of the high prevalence of dental caries in a certain area. Or in Malaysia, the school dental service was established in the late 40s to reduce the prevalence of dental caries, especially among the school children. Now, it may also be coordination of efforts and activities planning. This is done to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the health systems. For example, emphasizing on healthy diet choices for better living. It may also be planning for the allocation of resources. When the amount of resources is limited, the best alternative will have to be selected, one in which the desired goal can be achieved. For example, utilizing the help of community leaders and NGOs to reach out to the people. Now let's look at planning of dental health services. WHO in 1976 described the 6 main stages of planning, which is number 1, situation analysis, number 2, problem identification and formulation of objectives, number 3, formulation and analysis of alternative strategies, number 4, identification of special efforts, number 5, strategy selection, and number 6, program formulation. Now, this is a diagram to show the steps that I have mentioned earlier. Okay, so we shall repeat situation analysis as being the first one, problem identification and formulation of objectives, following that, formulation and an analysis of alternative strategies, identification of special efforts, selection of strategies, and formulation of the program. Now, situation analysis is the first stage and crucial step in the planning cycle, and it should aim at assessing the current oral health situation. And normally, we can do the SWOT analysis in this case by looking at the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. We also need to assess the oral health needs and expectations of the population. Situation analysis will also provide us with an evidence-informed basis for formulating future strategic directions for the oral health sector. These are basic information needed for planning. Now, first of all, we will look at the population profile. Okay, this will include the socio-demographic of the population, the age, ethnicity, social class, population, and mobility. Then we also look at the disease levels or the trends of disease among the population. Thirdly, we will also assess the availability of services. What are the current service provision that we have? What is the location? What about the accessibility and so forth? And fourthly, we also would like to assess the public concerns or demands on the health services. The second stage of oral health services planning is problem identification and formulation of objectives. In identifying the problem, our overall aim is to meet the oral health needs of the population. Now, needs can be classified into normative need, felt need, expressed need, and comparative need. What is normative need? Normative need is need as defined by the professionals or experts in a given situation. For example, the need to do restoration on a tooth. Now, while a felt need is a layperson's own assessment of his or her needs. And when this need is translated into actions, either by the use of services or requesting for more information, then it is called expressed need. Comparative need is assessment by comparing the health needs of similar groups of people. Traditionally, in problem identification, normative need is used. However, it has fundamental shortcomings. Now, the formulation of objectives must be realistic, achievable, and measurable. We must define the target population. What is the statement of priorities? What sort of oral indices are we going to use? Or are we going to use also non-dental indicators? Next is formulation and analysis of alternative strategies. Now, all alternative strategies must be carefully examined. We must consider the technical aspect, social, political, and also the financial feasibility. We must also do a cost-benefit analysis. Various combinations of preventive measures and different ways providing treatment services may also be considered. For example, Are we going to use a mobile unit, or is static clinic preferred? This will depend on what is the need of the services. Next is identification of special efforts. Now, proposal of change must be tested on a small scale to judge its value so as to minimize the risk. And these special efforts conducted can be in the form of collection of special data, field trips, pilot studies, or even training of programs. Now, under strategy selection, the most desirable strategy is selected after considering all the feasible alternatives and looking at their advantages and disadvantages. And to gain cooperation and support for future implementation, steps must be taken to involve not only the technical experts and administrators, but also providers and consumers of the services. It may be necessary to revise the objectives based on the feasibility and acceptability of the proposals, even at this juncture. It is also necessary to plan the detailed implementation after strategy selection. For example, what are the techniques to be employed, the intended coverage of the population, and so forth. We must indicate precisely what should be done, by whom, when, and what cost. Now, the plan should also include a description of the methods of evaluation and how to collect the data, and we must make arrangements so as to facilitate this collection of data. Next is planning for community dental programs. Now, steps in planning will involve identify the problem, determine the priorities, develop program goals, objectives, and activities, identify constraints, identify resources, identify alternative strategies, develop implementation strategy, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Now, these are essential steps in planning for community dental programs. The process of program planning uses a systematic approach and should be used as a guide to solving a particular problem. And the process of planning is, however, dynamic. Okay, the first step here would be conduct a needs assessment. This needs assessment is conducted so to enable us to identify the problem and to ascertain the extent and the severity of the problem. And when we conduct the needs assessment, we must obtain profile of the community to ascertain the cause of the problem. So the steps will be as you see in this planning process, and we will go through it one by one. Okay, number one, the first step is identify the problem. Now, this is the first step in the planning process, where we need to conduct a needs assessment. An assessment for a community can be quite costly. This is done by obtaining profile of the community to ascertain the cause of the problem. As I mentioned, we need to identify the extent and the severity of a problem and not just to ascertain the cause. Needs assessment is also done to evaluate the effectiveness of a program by obtaining baseline information and measuring the amount of progress achieved in solving the specific problem. Now, the information required will include profession profile, where we look at the size of the population, the ethnic background, the growth rate, the the age and the socio-economic structure. The median income of the community will also be considered. Standard of living. Now, because these two will measure the accessibility to the oral health services. Diet and nutritional levels, the geographic distribution of the diseases. We will also need information on the oral health status and healthcare facilities, manpower, educational system, and the public transport. Now, age distribution will tell us what the target groups are. Well, when we look at the socio-economic status, it will indicate affordability to get oral health care. Now, the median income of the community will reflect the ability to purchase the health services. The educational system is important if we want to start a school oral health program, for example. And public transport system is also important as it will indicate accessibility to the oral health service. Manpower will tell us, or rather will give us information on the number of dentists available. So it will tell us the dentist population ratio. Second is to determine priorities. Priorities should be determined based on extent and severity of the disease, as well as group with high-risk oral health needs. For example, the marginalized groups or the low-income minority groups. Once the target group has been identified based on the oral health needs, the type of programs should then be established. If priorities are not determined, the program may not serve those individuals or groups who need the care most. And most of the time, we need to establish priorities because of the limitation in resources. The third step is developing goals, objectives, and activities. What are program goals? Program goals are broad statements on the overall purpose of a program to meet a defined problem. For example, to improve the oral health of preschool children, or to improve the oral health of school-aged children in the community. Another example would be to reduce the prevalence of smoking amongst adolescents. Now, the goal that we develop must be a SMART goal, where S stands for specific, M measurable, A attainable, R relevant, and T timely. To summarize, our goal, we must ensure that our goals are specific and narrow for more effective planning. And it is something that is measurable as evidence that we are making progress. The goal must be also attainable, that is, it can be accomplished within a certain time frame. And goals should also be relevant and aligned with the objectives, and is set in a realistic end date. Now, this is just a diagram to show the goals that has been set for 2020, which is Healthy People 2020. A society in which all people live long and healthy lives. So this is the type of goal, because goals can be short-term goals, medium-term goal, or long-term goal. Now let's look at the National Oral Health Plan 2011 and 2020. We have the oral condition that has been specified looking at dental caries, periodontal condition, dentition status, and oral cancer. And key goals have been set according to the respective oral conditions. What do we mean by program objectives then? Program objectives is more specific than goals and describe in a measurable way the desired end results of program activities. It is a tool through which goals can be met through precise actions. And objectives should specify the 5 W's and the 1 H, which is what, who, where, when, how, and why. Now, outcome objective provides a means by which the outcome of the specific objective can be measured quantitatively. Now, this approach will help the evaluator and community to know the direction and extent of the program. Outcome objective also focuses on what the target population will know or will be able to do as a result of the program or activity. That means to say, outcome objective specify the end result of the program. Now, process objective will state the specific process by which a public health problem can be reduced and prevented. Okay, so this is the pathway of how we have the strategies laid out for us to reach the goals of 2020. Now, what do we mean by activities? Now, once the problem has been identified and the program goals and objectives have been established, the next step is to state how to bring about the desired results. Now, the area of a program planning is referred to as program activities. It is a statement made about the program activities. It describes how the objectives will be accomplished in order to meet the goals. And these activities, as I have mentioned earlier, will include questions like what is going to be done, who will be doing it, and when will it be done. For example, the activity is toothbrushing drill. So then we will ask the questions of when will it be done? Is it going to be conducted in the morning, or is it going to be conducted during the recess time, or is it going to be conducted just before the children leave school? Then the question will come again as who will be doing it? Will it be done by the children themselves unsupervised, or will it be supervised by the teachers, or will it be done by the dental therapists? And what is it that is going to be done? Okay, so the detail of the activities should be included. Now, the fourth step is resource identification. Okay, in other words, consideration of resource is important throughout the entire planning process. The extent to which strategy can be implemented within the existing resources should be assessed before we can determine the need for additional resources. The possibility of using existing resources differently should also be explored. Now, this could include reorienting existing services or change in our services investment wherever is appropriate. Okay, we must consider resources like manpower, money, materials, skills, knowledge, and time. Now, criteria is used to determine resources will be as follows. Criteria number 1 is appropriateness, where we will consider the most suitable resources to get the work done. Secondly is adequacy, the extent or degree to which the resources would complete the job. Effectiveness is how capable resources are at completing the work. And efficiency is the cost in terms of money and time spent to complete the work. Now, this criteria which I have mentioned, appropriateness, adequacy, effectiveness, and efficiency, are the most commonly used criteria to determine what resources should be used. Next is identify constraints. Many constraints and difficulties might occur in planning a program. Now, the obvious constraints to meet the program objectives must be determined. One of the best ways to identify constraints is to have discussion with groups that might be involved or affected by the program. Now, they might be able to identify the constraints and even offer alternatives, solution, and strategies for meeting the goals. By identifying these constraints early in the planning, we can modify the design and structure of the program for better results and outcome. For examples, some of the constraints can be identified to be as lack of funding, labor shortages, governmental policies, restrictions, and etc. Now, being aware of the existing constraints and given the available resources, the planner should consider alternative sources of actions. Generate sufficient number of alternatives so that at least one may be considered acceptable, if not all is accepted. Example, if preventive measures were considered to be cost-effective as well as the most practical to implement, then select this measure to be the best of the alternatives. For example, the question arises again as whether we want to use the mobile dental squad or the mobile dental clinic. These alternative strategies must be considered with the intention of us attaining the objectives most effectively. Develop implementation strategy. Implementation strategy for each activity is complete when the following questions are answered. Who, what, where, when, why, how. In other words, planner must know what specific activities they want to do. The process of putting the plan into operation is referred to as implementation. And health programs can be divided into 4 phases. Okay, during the implementation, it could be divided into 4 phases. Number 1 is the pilot phase, during which development proceeds on a trial and error basis. Second is control phase, where a model of a particular program strategy is run under regulated conditions to judge its effectiveness. Third is actualization phase, where a model of a program strategy is subjected to realistic operation conditions. And fourth is operational phase, where the program is an ongoing part of the structure. Now, during the implementation, monitoring is carried out. It is the process of maintenance of ongoing watch or follow-up over the activities of a health service. Okay, once a program has been implemented, it requires continuous surveillance of all activities in order to determine its success. In simple words, it is keeping a track of all the implementation process. It uses observations as a basis for continual modification of the goals, plans, or activities. And some of the data collected for monitoring will include input data such as financial reports, process data which are more specific, and the output data, for example, the service or the goods provided. And adjustments can be made as and when necessary should any of the flaws is encountered during the monitoring process. Now, the last step in planning for community dental programs is evaluation. Evaluation is intended to determine the value of the program. It measures the degree to which objectives and targets are fulfilled and the quality of the results obtained. It also measures the productivity of available resources in achieving clearly defined objectives. It measures how much output or cost effectiveness is achieved. It also makes possible the reallocation of priorities and of resources on the basis of changing health needs. Now, measurement of the results of a program that's conducted may be direct or indirect. Direct measures assess changes in oral health more objectively, for example, using oral health indices, while the indirect measure are used when results of the program may appear for a long time, such as the oral health promotion or oral health education that we conduct, whereby the change in behavior cannot be seen in a short period of time. Now, WHO in 1972 defined evaluation as the collection and analysis of information to determine the program performance. And it is mostly associated with the final outcome and other factors associated with it. It is measured on the basis of effectiveness, efficiency, appropriateness, and adequacy. Effectiveness is when the stated objectives are achieved and is measured by improvements in health. For example, a vaccine is effective when it is capable to produce the desired effect in the population, that is, protection against the disease. Another example would be effectiveness of fissure sealant program in reducing the pit and fissure caries. Being effective means achieving the organizational goals, while being efficient means achieving goals with little wasted resources. Three variables are useful in evaluating effectiveness, and they are resources, which are evaluated by dividing the actual expenditure of resources by the planned expenditure. Number two is activities, which are evaluated by dividing the actual performance by planned performance. And lastly is objectives, which are evaluated by dividing the actual attainment of objectives by planned objectives. For example, doing the right thing is equal to being effective. Now, what is efficiency? Efficiency is the ratio of the output to the inputs of any system. An efficient system or person is one who achieves higher levels of performance relative to the inputs. For example, worker A moved 16 boxes from the truck to the store in 1 hour, and worker B moved 9 boxes in 1 hour. So it is obvious that worker A is more efficient than worker B. Now, second example is car T uses 15 liters to travel 150 kilometers, while car F uses 18 liters to travel 150 kilometers. So car T is more fuel efficient than car F. Now, efficiency is a measure of the resources spent in the process of providing a healthcare program. And resources is not limited to just money. It may also include man, material, and time. Efficiency expresses the relationship between the effect obtained and the resources spent. It is an expression of the effects obtained in relation to activities undertaken and the resources spent. So, doing things right is being efficient. So, in this case, the key word for efficiency is resources spent. Appropriateness is the acceptability of the program by both consumers and providers. It reflects the proper prioritization based on the needs of the population. Now, the strategy of the program is effective but it may not be appropriate. Adequacy is the extent to which the population in need was covered by the services, or the extent to which the services covered the various aspects of the underlying problem. Adequacy should be distinguished from effectiveness, where effectiveness is only concerned with the results of the program. Now, types of evaluation. The major classification is formative and summative. Other types of evaluation include relevance, process, effectiveness, impact, and efficiency. Now, first of all, let us look at formative evaluation. Formative evaluation refers to the internal evaluation of a program. It is the examination of the activities of a program as they are taking place, and is usually carried out to aid in the development of a program in its early phase. Formative evaluation plays an important role in the pilot phase and control phase of the program implementation. Summative evaluation judges the merit or worth of a program after it has been in operation. It is an attempt to determine whether a fully operational program is meeting the goals for which it was developed. And summative evaluation helps in deciding upon the continuation of the termination or modification of a program. In other words, by doing summative evaluation, then we can decide whether the program that has been implemented is to be continued, or should it be modified, or should it be terminated. Now, relevance evaluation refers to activities designed to determine whether the program is needed or whether the program is targeting its efforts at the individuals in need. Now, programs that we implement may, to a certain extent, becomes irrelevant. So this is the time for us to determine whether the program is still needed or whether it can be discontinued. Now, process evaluation refers to efforts made to assess the extent to which the program implementation complies with the program plan. As in this case, the word is process evaluation. The assessment of the program's operation with the consistency of the planner's original intentions allows early adjustment to be made and modifications in the program continuation and expansion. Now, effectiveness evaluation refers to whether program results meet the predetermined objectives. Now, the emphasis here is on the immediate outcomes of the program activities and whether these outcomes meet the activities specified by the program planners. Now, impact evaluation refers to the long-term outcomes of the program. It considers whether the intervention had any long-lasting effects on the target problem that the program was designed to meet. It is also an expression of the overall effect of a program on the health status and socio-economic development. Now, efficiency evaluation relates the results obtained from a specific program to the resources expended to maintain the program. Okay, this is an example that we can see here to show the efficiency evaluation that's been done to some of the programs that has been implemented. So the steps in evaluation will be as follows. Number one is determine what is to be evaluated. Okay, once we have determined what is to be evaluated, we then establish the standards and criteria, and then we plan the methodology to be applied. We gather information by collecting data, we analyze the results, then we take action and we re-evaluate. The first step in evaluation is determine what is to be evaluated. Okay, number one is resource evaluation. Evaluate the facilities, manpower, and the equipment, and also the organization. Process evaluation, that is how is it carried out. We are looking at the way in which the activities of the program is carried out by comparing the predetermined standards. Now, outcome evaluation is the result and is concerned with the results of the program. Second step is to establish standards and criteria. Standards and criteria must be established to determine how well the desired objectives have been attained. And it must be developed in accordance with the focus of evaluation. Thirdly is planning the methodology. There must be a format that we have to prepare for gathering information and in keeping with the purpose of the evaluation. So we need to plan the methodology of the evaluation. Fourth is gathering the information. Now, when we do evaluation, we need to collect data or information. And this type of information must include political, cultural, economic, environmental, and administrative factors, depending on the type of program that we implement. Now, the above factors will influence the health situation as well as the morbidity and mortality statistics. Then we analyze the results. The analysis and interpretation of data and the feedback should take place within the shortest time feasible. And one of the methods that we can use by using the SWOT analysis, where we'll look at the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Opportunities should be provided for discussing the evaluation results. Taking action. For any evaluation to be truly productive, emphasis should be placed on actions. And these actions must be designed to support, strengthen, or modify the services involved. Now, this may also call for shifting priorities. Sometimes there is a need to shift the priority or to revise objectives or the need to develop new program or services as a result of our evaluation. Now, re-evaluation is also an important exercise and it is an ongoing process where we will examine again so that new changes may be considered. Re-evaluation is mainly aimed at rendering health activities more relevant, efficient, and effective. This is a simple diagram to show the monitoring and evaluation across program life cycle. It starts off with assessment. What is the nature of the health problem? And then number 2 is the strategic planning. What primary objectives should the program pursue to address this problem? Third is design. What strategy, interventions, and approaches should the program use to achieve these priorities? Number 4 is implementation and monitoring. How do we know the activities are being implemented as designed? How much does implementation vary from site to site? And how can the program become more efficient or effective? Now, this is done by conducting monitoring during the implementation phase. And this is followed by evaluation. In evaluation, we seek to find out whether the strategy is working or how do we judge if the intervention is making a difference or not. Okay, so this is a very simple diagram to show the steps or the program life cycle in monitoring and evaluation. This brings us to the end of our lecture for today. This is an important lecture, and like always, I would suggest that you do further reading, and should you face any problem, please do not hesitate to contact me. See you all. Bye-bye.